enough, I guess. But on this segment of the podcast, we're going to look deeply into the future by taking a small step backward, as we're so fond of doing, Bri. As 2017 wound down, the young fastener professionals and the NFDA co-sponsored an event in Chicago. Actually, it happened in November. They called it the Leadership Academy, and it covered 2 days of various topics, and we got a couple of the guys from the YFP to join us to do a little bit of a brain dump on that. From ITW Shakeproof, Mike Ricciardi's here. Hey, Mike, you out there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So you're ready to educate all of us, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. This will be fun.
Well, that's asking a lot, but we'll try and make it that way. I don't know if you've ever heard the podcast, Mike.
Yeah, how good a teacher are you?
But also getting on this bandwagon from a little old company called Star Stainless, it's Bryan Wheeler. Hey, Bri, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
It's all right, matey.
So this event, the Leadership Academy, this was a brainstorm, I guess, of the YFP, and it sounds like it was fairly interesting because somehow whoever created this or whoever put it together invited Shelley Alcorn, a futurist and thought leader, as she's described, and she was facilitating some conversations that really had a lot to do with high tech, such as AI, additive manufacturing. I'm guessing that you talked a lot about autonomous vehicles and all that type of thing. And that really caught Bryan and I, so we wanted to speak with you a little bit about that. Mike, why don't we start off with you? First, please give our audience a little bit of a thumbnail about what you do over there at ITW Shakeproof, since we haven't talked to you before, and then give us your impressions about this event.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so ITW Shakeproof is a manufacturer, a fastener manufacturer, cold heading primarily out of Wisconsin and Illinois. We're across the board as far as automotive and industrial type vehicles for the most part. My side is on the sales side, so I'm really, I'm really looking forward to working with you guys on this one. But yeah, with the Leadership Academy, we really tried to focus extremely on technology. And as you spoke to, Shelley Alcorn really dug deep into AI and robotics and automation and the impact on our specific futures, especially in the fastener industry. So it was really, really cool. I liked it.
And you didn't terrify everyone and make them all run away screaming when you mentioned technology?
No, not exactly. We got a chance. I mean, it was great because it was a lot of younger people, and you really don't see that too often in this industry.
Yep.
Bryan Wheeler, you've been involved with the Young Fastener Professionals since its inception. I take it most of our listeners know what Star Stainless is all about, so I won't ask you to go back that far. But as far as this event and the YFP, I mean, what was the grand vision for it?
You know, when we sat down and took a look at this, the grand vision was really to gear a program for the current and future leaders of the industry. And rather than looking at the current practices that companies are using, really looking forward to what's to come in the future and how some of these new technologies mesh together and blend with our current operations and way of going to market. So, Shelley mentioned a lot of different things. I think some of the ones that were really most applicable to our industry were kind of some of the uses of IoT and AI from both a distribution and a manufacturing standpoint.
For our listeners, in case they haven't guessed, IoT is the Internet of Things.
Yeah, and AI for artificial intelligence. More on the viewpoint of processing data. Some of our companies and some of our analytics are already looking at these. So the way that we can process usage data to get better estimates for projections on total usages, and also identifying potential areas of improvement both in sales or operation.
So if you were to have this conversation like 10, 15 years ago, the new technology would have been these RFID chips, which are thinking they could put into like boxes of bolts or something like that. So is the IoT, is this the new evolution of what would have been these RFID chips?
I think looking at it, everyone's really familiar with VMI programs and how prevalent they've become in distribution, vendor-managed inventories, and now the Internet of Things, the placement of sensors, weight sensors inside bins where you can live monitor how many pieces are in the bin without physically sending a person to go and count them, allowing for a distributor to view their customers' inventory inside of their building and know when they need to go and replenish the bin stock and how much they need to bring to replenish it.
Okay, interesting take. Righto.
One of the big things that Shelley brought up too was by 2020, there's expected to be somewhere around 1 trillion sensors attached to the internet, and that's going to be huge. I mean, just from a preventative maintenance standpoint, on our vehicles, there's going to be so many different sensors that are going to be able to catch everything.
Yeah, as well as in your refrigerator and your washing machine.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And your light switches and the door locks.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it now with Amazon with the smart buttons. You know, you can have the button for all of your different household goods, and when you're running low on the laundry detergent, you press the button, and Amazon will automatically send you the laundry detergent that you need. As you know, ideas like this as far as sensors and responses that customers can do. You know, I'm low on this particular item, and they can automatically go ahead and receive that. And even going one step further is to having an artificial intelligence or a program track that usage for you and order it for you before you even have to hit the button.
Right. Yeah, that's getting into the modern stuff. A lot.
Yeah, even further than that, what's really cool is another thing by 2025, and this is just what I was reading, first city of 50,000 people will have 0 traffic lights because it just won't be necessary anymore.
Wait, hang on. Roll that back. Explain this a little bit. Are you saying that this is an autonomous vehicle setup?
Yeah. I mean, these types of things with these sensors involved, they'll be able to catch any specific maintenance issue, any car issue that we could potentially be running into. They'll be able to work on autonomous vehicles, and essentially 50,000 people will be able to run smoothly with no traffic lights. I mean, to me, that's astounding.
The one that she brought up to me that I found very astounding was the Sophia, the first artificial intelligence robot that was declared citizenship by Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and as it turns out, she has more rights, I guess, than a lot of organic female human beings in Saudi Arabia, which is really weird.
Yeah, there's a bit of, political work has to take place in some of these areas, even as getting rid of the traffic lights too.
I think I saw on the news today about the autonomous vehicle in Pittsburgh that got in a car accident earlier today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, we're going to hear that. I mean, the same was when we were finishing our show in Las Vegas, their first attempt at an autonomous bus, another car banged into it. But they had same problems with the first cars when they were trying to drive them too.
Right, we dealt with that a little bit in a previous episode. But, okay, so guys, it's obvious that you dealt with the seaboard of high-tech issues in this leadership conference. And I'm sure that it was more than just superficially talking about each one. I mean, we started off this conversation, I guess, with, Bryan, you were mentioning the advent of the RFID chip, which is now, I guess, being somewhat supplanted with the IoT version. And that's going to be used in all kinds of supply situations. What specifically, or let's say it this way, where do you say, Bryan Wheeler, that the industry is currently, and what is the next step that this technology is going to enable?
I think right now the industry is really embracing kind of the idea of how to use the technology to help better projections and also their better operations. So projections using this predictive technology to deep dive into sales data, quoted data, to really develop customer trends. I think you see the development of CRM systems and how they're starting to change CRM systems being the customer relationship management, and how now the prominence of voice over IP. So when somebody calls into your specific company, the computer then takes over and will pull their account up, show analytics as far as what they buy, how their purchasing compares this year to previous years, how their purchasing compares to other people within their typical markets. And really, I see in the future these being used to help identify opportunities for growth and really working towards enhancing the level of service and sales experience that suppliers can give to the customers, and that trickle-down effect all the way to the end user. I guess beyond that, at a distribution level and at a supply level, being able to have those better projections. So using the analytics to say, this is what the customer has used for the last 5 years in trend, and rather than waiting for the 6th year for them to come and quote the item, kind of already having the idea that I can bring it to the customer and say, these are the items that you typically purchase, and here's our pricing for the next year moving forward.
Right. Now, Mike Ricciardi, I'm going to throw the same question at you. And in light of what Bryan Wheeler just mentioned in terms of the grand vision for all this, which I have to say has been kind of the grand vision for quite some time, where do you think the industry is currently in utilizing this type of technology, and where do you think the next step is going to be based on what you guys discussed in this conference?
Yeah. So, what I say, what actually made a huge impact on me, and I've actually taken this pretty personally over the past couple of weeks since the show, was really deep diving into the marketing aspect. So, yeah, in a lot of cases, the quality side, basically with a lot of domestic manufacturers, and I'm, of course, speaking to the manufacturing side because that's where I'm at. But from a manufacturing standpoint, quality levels at, let's say, overseas vendors are getting very, very, very good. And it's typically very, very tough to compete. So in this case, in like what I really learned was that marketing attention arbitrage. And basically what I mean by that is our abilities to really understand our customer at a much better level, at a much higher level than that of our overseas competitors.
Uh-huh.
And that, I think, is going to be the competitive advantage moving forward. So first and foremost, future, we're talking 2018, 2019, 2020, we got to make sure that we understand ourselves, we empathize with our customers, and really get a true feeling for what our current customer base is going through. I mean, all of these are much easier now that we have the tools that Bryan talked to.
I want to go back to Bryan Wheeler, just a question here. In the, if you looked at some of the older systems, then if the idea you're talking about, the, say, weight measuring devices sitting in VMI systems, that seems a really slick idea, okay? But you could say that you've already got that. If you're the supplier, then your computer system has supplied those items to them anyway. I mean, shouldn't you know that already anyway? Why is this something different?
I think as far as a past supply versus something that's being managed at, say, a manufacturing facility where the projection of total units produced in a given time frame, there's definitely an average, but at times of maybe increased production where the usage could get skewed either up or down away from where its average is, being able to have that live inventory view is helpful. So that way, as the total number of units produced in a facility goes up, you know that you need to replenish their stock levels either more rapidly or not as rapid as in past time. So giving you that live feedback rather than just general average based on past usages.
Okay.
I think even for a company like ourselves where we have multiple locations, not every location uses the same amount of product month in and month out. The usage, varies. So being able to manage each individual location's inventory live allows us to open and close distribution channels for different items depending on where it needs to go and how often it's being used. So if my branch in Illinois, where I am, is using a product, more rapidly than we have in the past, we can draw inventory from another branch, which isn't using it quite as often as it had in the past. That aspect of live data versus having to actually act upon needs. So just allowing the automation to pass that information without needing to have a physical person monitor it.
Okay. Given an ordinary distribution center then, say, nothing fancy, but like a lot of ordinary fastener companies have, how would you see devices that would be part of the Internet of Things being used in say, your ordinary warehouse system?
I believe you're already starting to see it. The idea of some of the vending machines, not just the vending machine as far as a carousel vending machine, but as far as the weight sensing vending machines that are being placed in some of the warehouses now by companies such as Fastenal or Brighton or Worth, where each individual item is weight sensitive, and as it gets removed, they have that live data, knowing that next time I send my employee out to that location to restock the machine, they know they know exactly what needs to get replaced, rather than just sending somebody out with a truck full of goods and having to see what was used. They know he needs this many of every single thing that was removed.
Okay.
And I think that live connection is already an Internet of Things application you're seeing in a standard end user from a standard distributor.
Okay.
And I would say that we've actually, nowadays in 2017, we've actually come to expect fast deliveries and just in time. I mean, think about the Amazon packaging, just that Amazon effect of 1 to 2 day delivery. If that doesn't happen, then we're mad. I mean, It's plain and simple. That's just that's the way that we're now programmed. When something like that comes out, we expect it.
Right. This is Amazon's way of upsetting the whole distribution system.
Correct. Right. They're good at it.
Right. Now, everyone expects you to be able to do that too.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've seen, when it comes down to it, orders where they come in, the expectation is, sometimes down to 2 weeks. And you got a manufacturing level that can take, 6, 8, 10 weeks. It gets very, very tough. So, more so than any time ever, the automation is absolutely key when it comes down to the actual processes. And, what was actually really cool when we actually started really deep diving into some of these, robotics, AI, we went into what if questions. And some of those what if questions during the Leadership Academy was, what if product development is changed? What if product development is obsoleted? What if quality is obsoleted? And these are all great questions to initiate, kind of makeshift our brains to think in a different way.
I think, Mike, you cracks me up when you say the customer expects 8 to 10 weeks on some of this stuff. We'll call customers, call the order in from the parking lot.
Oh, forget it. Yeah, I know. I
get it.
Right.
They call it in from the parking lot and walk in the door and can't figure out why it's not sitting on the shelf waiting for them.
Hey, you know why I'm not working for a distributor right there.
I think even the evolution of some of the smart warehouses, the automated picking, the conveyor systems, and how it moves and passes product to the appropriate locations. I think these are also examples of online sensors and automated processes that are really starting to become more prevalent within our industry. Some of the smart trays on the carousel systems where when your order picker removes one bag, it automatically adjusts the inventory within the computer, knowing that bag, based on its weight, had a certain amount of pieces in it. And that allows for trigger points for the purchasing department to know it's time for them to replenish that stock based on whatever trigger point you develop for your reorders. And I think these are things that really you're already starting to see, and in the next 3 to 5 years will really become commonplace.
Let me ask you this. The promise of all this stuff is obviously huge and impacts as well. But did you discuss or do you have any feelings on what would be the biggest obstacles to getting the smart warehouse implemented? I mean, why hasn't it happened already? What's preventing it?
I think monetary investment in the technology and where the ROI is on doing it. So how much it costs to put the technology into place, the initial investment, and how long will it take you to recoup that investment? And I think right now, especially coming as this technology became more, it was coming out of a recessionary period as it started to become more available. And I think still over the years, this standard user is apprehensive to invest millions of dollars into a program that doesn't directly output higher sales. So that analysis of where is the return on my investment, and the investment being rather high, I think as it becomes more and more prevalent, the cost starts to come down, which makes it more available to more distributors and to just more companies in general.
Yeah, I'd say from our side too, it tends to be, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because that seems to be the mantra, at least in the 3 to 4 years that I've been in this industry. But we have to change that. I think that's why things like this are so relevant. The Leadership Academy and talking about technologies. If it ain't broke, break it. You got to figure out ways to break it, because otherwise we're going to be stuck, and we're not going to be able to move forward with the times. And in today's day and age, somebody else is going to spend that money. Somebody else is going to spend that capital, and they're going to pass you.
Right, because it's the same theory of costing and return on investment that used to be around like 20 years ago when PCs cost a lot of money, and you'd go and say, so how many PCs have you got? Well, we're just waiting for them to come down in price. Of course, they've been coming down in price for the last 20 years, and they haven't stopped. So the people who actually invested, and then they had a distinct advantage over everyone else, and probably the same in this field here right now.
Yeah, well, again, here's a great opportunity to take a look at the Amazon effect. And in their case, they may have such a huge competitive advantage because of the technology that may be unstoppable. Let me ask you this, guys. So further to the leadership conference then, I mean, obviously we're not going to be able to get our arms around all of these technologies that you discussed because it's just a huge topic area. But were there takeaways for you in terms of practical things that young fastener professionals could be doing to be able to jump in to one or more of these areas to make you or your organizations better prepared to meet all this?
Yeah, I would say that one of the last question blocks that they went through was talking a little bit about our careers, how we can create a better opportunity for ourselves. And that's where we got a little bit into personal brand. You tend to hear that, and people tend to kind of shy away. Oh, personal brand, what do you mean? Social media? Like, I don't want to worry about that. That's not something for me. Well, more so than any time ever in today's day and age, that is an important factor. When you talk about LinkedIn, when you talk about even when it comes down to Facebook and Instagram, I mean, these are all huge opportunities for us to create true opportunities for ourselves and our businesses. More so than ever too. I mean, I've found myself that B2B marketing, business to business marketing has risen into places like Facebook. And these are all ways that we can create better communication for the masses. The one-to-one phone call is definitely not dead. That is something that we will continue to do moving forward as a sales team, as engineering and everything. But on the other side, how do you scale? And that's what I believe I really took out of this.
Hear that, Bri?
Yeah.
Social media. You got to start finding ways to create your own personal brand, Bri.
I mean, in a way, this is an ideal place for the young, fast and professionals, because you're in a position where you can actually lead the companies that you're in into the use of this technology, because there's probably a reluctance, even if it's not financial, because of the fear of technology at a certain level. And we haven't even mentioned really 3D printing yet.
No, and that has been on my mind because for a lot of reasons. But again, there are so many different ways that the conversation can go. It's a little bit daunting, I would say. We've already been at it for half an hour, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface, to tell you the honest truth. Let me ask you this, though, and I guess this kind of tells to my tendency to look at the dark side of all of this. Before we close it down, too, I want to talk about the Bill Joy article from like 10 years ago that we were discussing recently. But guys, at any point during this 2-day event, did Shelley point out the dark side of any of these technologies? I mean, you know, we hinted a little bit about Sophia, and IoT certainly has its scary impacts. But I mean, did you guys go there at all?
Yeah, actually a little bit. One of the things that she brought up was, again, going into artificial intelligence, how it's growing so much faster than people actually expected. Some of her PowerPoints were very visually stunning to us and super eye-opening, because she was talking about how artificial intelligence can have dreams now. I mean, these are things that, you know, we were seeing in movies 5 years ago, but it's actually truthful today. One of the stories that really resonated with me was there was a world famous chess player, and they were playing artificial intelligence for the first time. And traditionally what they do, you know, when they're playing robots, that robot will be programmed with every single move that's been documented forever in chess. And basically the world famous chess player will win most times, because they have that ability to think for themselves. But with artificial intelligence, it completely changed the game. So they were able to create and manipulate moves that have never been documented before. And when that world famous chess player lost, he actually cried. And he was saying, "I'm not crying because I lost. I'm crying because I'm scared for humanity." So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, some of the comments are from the development of, I guess, the humanoid robots, which is sort of also going on, and attempting to develop human-like habits or traits for these things. And it's very interesting, some of the results of this. And, you know, I mean, these things are thinking in a way they've been programmed, but they also have the ability to apply new rules to this, and that gets sort of interesting. I mean, it goes straight into this area that Eric has alluded to, this guy, Bill Joy from Sun Microsystems, who was a very, very, very smart man and thought deeply, 20 years ago. Where is this stuff going to go?
Well, yeah, so you just segued kind of back into that, so I might as well just mention it right now. Bill Joy wrote an opinion piece in Wired magazine. We've talked about this previously on the podcast, I know, Bri. But this Bill Joy article or op-ed was called "Why the Future Doesn't Need Us," and it was actually in the April 2000 edition of that magazine, which used to be a really big deal, guys. I think it's a little bit before your time. It's still out there, but it's a shadow of its former self.
Yeah.
And this article has become the manifesto, really, of the school of thought that is warning against the development of technology, but also preventing the conundrum that we're never going to stop it. And I would highly recommend that anybody who's interested in this whole subject get out there and just Google, here I am, Ray Kurzweil would be proud, "Why the Future Doesn't Need Us" by Bill Joy, and really get an idea about where we're at. And it hasn't stopped yet. Let me ask you this, gentlemen. Maybe, Bryan, you haven't piped in on this one yet. Did the idea of the singularity come up at all during the conference?
Speaking to your Wired magazine thing, Rosie, that was one thing we kind of we were talking about all the sensors and we were talking about all the software, and at one point we had brought up that you're going to have the sensors and the manufacturing side that can trigger the machines to do producing. You'll have the sensors on the distribution side saying when they're low on stock. You'll have the AI that's developing the purchase orders. Before you know it, we'll be sitting behind the desk and the computer will be running the business, and we'll all be sitting here asking if it can give us a raise, if we get paid this week, or what's going on, because before you know it, everything will be so automated that we'll start to lose control over the humanity side of who's making the decision, because we used to decide how much we bought and from what factory we bought it from and who we sold it to. And before you know it, it starts to take all those decisions away as we start to automate more and more. We were talking about the AIs and how, I forget which company it was, but they had the two artificial intelligences that started speaking to each other and eventually developed their own language and were able to communicate beyond what we could understand.
Right, so it sounds like you guys had your own "why the future doesn't need us" moment during this event, which
most
certainly. You reached the same point, didn't you?
Yeah.
That discussion got a little ridiculous. As you can imagine, it was about 30 minutes where we were just going on and on about why are we even here?
Yeah.
Yes,
right.
It's an existential question, that's for sure. Now, let me ask you this, gentlemen. Had either of you really considered this idea deeply before you went to this conference? Or did it kind of open your eyes?
I'd say for me, it was definitely eye-opening. I mean, some of the things that she brought up, I could tell that she had a keen eye on technology. She knew what was going on here and now. And that was, it was so cool. Discussing blockchain. I mean, these are all things. Even in November, it was kind of like, oh, what is that? What is this whole Bitcoin thing? All this stuff, and she was bringing that kind of stuff up. So it was really cool overall. Just that first segment. I mean, just listening to her was cool.
How about you, Bryan Wheeler?
Yeah, I had thought about it a little bit in the past. Maybe even more just as simple as applying the idea of the hotel minibar. If you take this away, the sensor automatically charges your room, and how something like that could be applied within the industry. But not quite as deeply as Shelley had really kind of opened my mind to really how many different areas this can be applied into, and how when you get them all to work together, it can really create systematic changes within the entire industry.
Yep. No, you're right. You're right.
Well, once again, this is such a huge subject area that we could only scratch the surface during this conversation, but I'd like to thank you gentlemen for presenting a little bit of it here on the podcast and giving people an idea about what went on. I'd like to congratulate the young fastener professionals, I guess, for succeeding in your main mission, which was to open some eyes and perhaps build some momentum for future events like this. Also the NFDA for jumping in, sponsoring it, facilitating it, and so forth. And I'll also say this, it may be a little esoteric sounding for some of our listeners out there who are distributors who are, let's face it, they're just trying to sell a few screws, right? But sounds like we're all going to have to confront these realities in the not-too-distant future.
I do know, and speaking between YFP and NFDA, this is a program that we do have hopes to continue, not just in the Midwest, but moving it around to various regions to give other individuals, both manufacturing distributors alike, an opportunity to attend closer to their homes.
Sounds like a great idea. Okay.
Yes, and it's definitely not just for the young, too. It doesn't mean that, you have to be young to be a part of this group.
No, this is really targeted current and future leaders.
Absolutely.
Well, what do people do if they want to stay abreast of future opportunities, even though the future doesn't need us?
I would say keeping an eye on both the YFP and the NFDA website. As we have more details figured out as far as future programs, we'll make that available via both the social media outlets and the web-based outlets as well. So just kind of keeping your eyes peeled for those announcements, be it on the Twitters or directly on the website.
Got it. Well, most fully threaded radio listeners are the types of fastener people who are abreast of the usual characters when it comes to fastener media, so I think they'll probably get wind of it. Stay tuned to Fully Threaded Radio, and we'll point you in the right direction. Hey guys, you mentioned personal brands earlier in the conversation, and I don't think you hurt yourselves by joining in on this conversation today. I hope you did a little bit of brand building by participating. So thanks once again to Bryan Wheeler of Star Stainless and Mike Ricciardi with ITW Shakeproof. It was great to have you guys on the podcast.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I mean, this has been a lot of fun.
And worry.
Oh, agreed. Couldn't agree more.
Hey everyone, it's Fully Threaded Radio. We'll be right back.
Once you're in this industry, you're not getting out.